Welcome to the Start Strong, Finish Strong podcast with Greg Weiss. In this episode, I sat down with Stevie V Brown, business coach and the owner of The Change Starter. We discussed what's involved in stepping away from the corporate world, starting your own business, and how to know if that's the right decision for you. Let's get into it. Hi there, everybody. I'm here today with Stevie V Brown, who is the marketing results coach with The Change Starter. And I've known Stevie for a number of years, and I thought she'd be a fantastic person to have on because Stevie has gone from being in the corporate world to having her own business. And a number of you are considering doing a similar thing. So who better to ask than Stevie V Brown? How are you, Stevie?
I'm good, Greg. How are you?
I'm really good, and I'm really excited to have you on the show today.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
You're welcome. You're welcome. So we have known each other for a few years, and disclosure, I have been asking Stevie for advice about my business over some time, and I've found that Stevie's got some really great advice. So why don't we help the audience with a little bit about you? How did you get into your own business? What was your corporate background? Just a little bit on that.
Sure. So I guess I started in the advertising industry back in 2001. And my very first job in the advertising industry was with Saatchi & Saatchi in London. Which, is a fairly famous ad agency. So I remember being really excited that I got this job at Saatchi. And I was there for over 5 years. And then I moved through various different agencies and various different types of marketing as well. So, Saatchi's was very much traditional advertising. And then in that, I got the opportunity to move into something called shopper marketing, which is more of a specialism. Based on how people actually shop in store. And then I did a range of that kind of marketing in various different agencies and worked on brands like L'Oreal, McDonald's, Visa, Samsung, Coca-Cola, pretty much all the major brands that you could name. And then at some point in the middle of that, I moved from the UK. You may detect the British accent. Anyone
No
listening?
way.
And so I moved to Australia, and then I was still working in a few agencies here in various strategic roles and leadership team roles. And then at some point I was like, right, that's it. I'm ready now to go and start my own business. So I've had my business now for over 6 years, which has been quite a ride. Yeah.
And so we're going to talk about the business itself.
Sure.
But what was your decision to move from corporate type work into having your own business?
My own business. Well, my mum and dad had their own businesses. So I'd grown up in a world of having your own business. They worked in jobs before they had their business, but mainly through my life, it was business. And so I guess it seemed almost natural to me. And I remember as a kid, I would be, like most kids were playing with dolls and pretending to be brides and things like that. And I was walking around with this briefcase that I made for myself out of cardboard. And I was this character, Julie, who was a businesswoman. I don't know what Julie did, but she was a businesswoman. And that's kind of what I wanted to do. That was my thing. So I guess it was always there that I would do it at some point. But I think, the decision to do it came a few years before I actually did it, because I decided to train as a coach, and I did that, study alongside work. And I knew in my mind that was my future, that I was going to leave and start a business. And so I think, for me, the timing was actually fairly logistical, because it was partly related to me becoming a resident of Australia, because I couldn't have my business before that. So I was sort of waiting on that a little bit. And it was partly related to me being in a very difficult situation in the last company that I worked for, whereby, I just needed to get out. I didn't want to work with the person that I was being forced to, unfortunately, work alongside. And it was a very unpleasant experience for not just me, but others in the business. So it sort of was a natural evolution that got my residency. I was, at a point where I'd done my training for my my coaching training, and then also I just needed to get the hell out of where I was. So it was kind of like then it sort of happened. But I think, why was I going to do that? Why was I going to start a business? Was because I never really liked working for anybody else, because I'm a divergent thinker. And so, when you work in corporate, you have to work with the system, the rules, the grid. There's always a grid, and it's like you follow steps 1 to 10 to do these things. And I was always the person that would be like, well, hang on a minute, I'm down with step 1, but steps 2 to 9 seem a bit pointless. So how about we just skip to 10 because it's more logical and we can get there quicker? And everyone was like, no, you have to follow all the steps. And I used to just go around the rules. So I didn't get on very well as an employee because I'm a divergent thinker. And I knew that for me, following my rules that I made was going to be a much more pleasant experience, not just for me, but probably for the people around me too.
Right. Hence the term, the change starter, I guess.
Yeah, pretty much. I mean, there is some bit more story to that as well, but I don't know if you want to hear about that. But
well, let's circle back to that.
Yeah.
But I'm just curious about what you've used the term divergent thinker. Before we move into something else, what do you mean by divergent thinker? Because there may be some people out there who
don't. Yeah. So being a divergent thinker means that when you look at, I guess, a problem or a situation, you look at it in every possible way, every possible angle in terms of solutions, opportunities, what can it mean? And so working at Saatchi's as my very first career choice, we had, it's not there now because they moved building, but it was always a very famous, address, which was 80 Charlotte Street in London. And on the steps to 80 Charlotte Street, which is the head office, was a stone which was engraved with the mantra for Saatchi's, which is nothing is impossible. And so I was 21 years old when I first started working there. As my first real big job. I'd worked and done stuff for my dad, and I'd been a waitress and all of that, but this was my first real job. And they taught me nothing is impossible, and that was the culture and that was the way that we operated. So if a client needed something done and we got roadblocks, so we can't do it because of this, we can't do it because of that, we would find another way. And if we couldn't find another way, we'd find another way, because it just wasn't an option to fail. So you had to find a solution. And so that was inbuilt in me from the beginning. And I think, working in somewhere like Saatchi's where you've got creativity, I could be more divergent in my thinking because people were looking for ideas all the time and new ways of thinking about things and doing things and looking at things. And they were always looking for opportunities. But not every, agency in the marketing world is like that. And also sometimes you have to be creative within a space. So you can be creative now, but now you've come out of that meeting, you're not allowed to be creative anymore. Now you need to follow the grid again, which didn't really work for me very well because I'm sort of like a shiny new object person. So I'll be like, well, we're focused on one thing. I go, oh, but what about this thing over here? And it kind of gets exciting. So I think for me, divergent thinkers, and often I think, entrepreneurs and business owners are those sorts of thinkers. We're not going to follow the structure. We're not going to follow the status quo. We're going to be the underdogs, and we're going to think outside, it's so cliche, but think outside the box, and I think for me, that's something which really was probably a real weakness for me in a job as an employee. And that's something that, you always ask, what are your weaknesses? Well, my weakness is I'm a divergent thinker. And you go, oh no, that means troublemaker in corporate world, right? Because you're not going to follow the rules. But in your own business, it's an absolute strength and asset for you to be able to think that way, because you can find solutions to problems, you can be resilient, and you can see opportunities in things that others don't see.
Well, that's okay, and that's a beautiful segue into a list of questions that I do have around this, because as you'd know, in working together with me, that we've trademarked the Slim Pact model for career enrichment. And the S, the L, the I, the M, and the P stand for different things. So we're talking about weaknesses, but the S also stands for strengths.
Yeah.
So what's S? What strengths in Slim Pact did you recognize in yourself before going into your own business and marketing? And you've mentioned divergent thinking as one.
Yeah. I mean, I think that's probably the main one, but I think the other strengths for me are that I always had, and it probably comes from the divergent thinking, but I always had, lots of ideas about things that just weren't possible within frameworks. And so, that was something that I thought could be a possibility in going into my own business, because I could make the decisions and I could decide how to create products and services that were going to meet, obviously client needs. But I think, that was one of the key strengths. And I think the other thing is just, I've always had a brain that balances quite well between the creative and the rational logic side of things. So I can be super organized if I need to be, and I can put things in the grid and in the box and follow the process. But I can also switch into like being massively just creative and free thinking. And I think that having that really good balance means that I'm able to come up with the ideas, but then I'm also able to say, and now you've got the idea, this is how you should execute it. And so I think that's a real strength where, in the beginning of my career, I was, for people who wouldn't know the advertising term of account management, it's basically project management, essentially, liaising directly with the client, timelines, budgets, organizing people, getting things done. So I had that training, but then in my latter part of my career, as I became more senior, I also became more I was on the management side, but I was also on the strategic side of the business. So looking at the planning and the strategy for clients. And so on that side of things, you're definitely more thinking more outside the box and thinking bigger picture as well. And so I guess I've got the skill set of both. And that was really, it's a strength, because when you go into your own business, as you know, Greg, you need to wear all the hats, at least at first, when you first start. And I think that as many hats as you can have in your toolbox is really important for you to be able to succeed.
Yes, absolutely. So, but the interesting thing is, from the S, it was a recognition through the work that you'd done with Saatchi's that it was the divergent thinking, it was the creative, out of the box thinking, but at the same time working out what you could do with an undercurrent of nothing is impossible to work out about your strengths within the marketing side of things. Yeah. And so the lesson that I'd like to be able to actually share on the S with our listeners is really doing an audit of what those strengths are. Note that Stevie didn't actually look at her weaknesses. It was actually her strengths that she deployed in order to be able to actually get into the marketing side. What about L, which is now L stands for loves or interests that you have. And so let's talk about that.
Yeah, so look, I think for me, and this is really the story of why I called my business The Change Starter, is I really recognize that all of us in life and in business, we have our limits. We put these limits on ourselves often. So we all sit in our comfort zone, and it's easy to sit in your comfort zone, right? We can all just carry on, la, 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 and you're just there, and everything's working, and you've got it all optimized, and you're just doing what you're doing. But it's really easy to stay in that comfort zone and then suddenly wake up, a year, 5 years, 10 years later and go, oh my goodness, I haven't really moved on. And not everybody has a need to move on or self-develop or progress their career. Not everyone has that, and that's fine, that's for them. But for me, I get really bored. So if I'm not reaching outside my comfort zone, then for me, I'm not challenging myself. And I think a lot of people, when they try to reach outside their comfort zone, they get really stuck on their own, of course, because it's hard, it's scary sometimes, it depends what they're trying to do, but sometimes they can't even recognize where they need to go to get outside their comfort zone. And I really saw this in people. And so a lot of, because I was managing teams and things in my more senior years in my corporate career, I saw people just struggling along in the same comfort zone. And I just felt like, there's an opportunity to really help people get outside of their comfort zone and to really help hold their hand through and support them through and be their cheerleader so that they can take the next step. And so even though my business is very focused on helping people with the marketing side of their own business, it is, depending on the clients, it can also be a personal journey for the client, because like I'm working with a client at the moment, and they have got an amazing business. They're doing really well. Even they haven't really been badly affected by COVID, and they are ready to take a next step in their business. They're moving to a new premise. It's going to be bigger. They've got to fill that space. and they know that their marketing side is not quite right yet. They've got things that have evolved and need sorting out. So I come in to help them with that. But part of the journey for them is taking the step forward and being quite brave to do that, and saying, well, we've got to leave a few things behind that maybe we quite like because they're in our comfort zone and we're quite comfortable with them. But we know that to move forward, we need to leave them behind, and we need to get some new things, and we need to adjust some things, and the way things have been is not going to be how they are in the future. So there's a very personal aspect often to what I do with clients, where they're taking their own personal journey of evolution and getting out that comfort zone. And I saw, for me, I'm passionate about helping people to do that, because I hate it when I find myself stuck and I look around and go, what am I doing? I haven't moved this thing in my life or in my business, and it's frustrating. So people need coaches, people need someone by their side, in their corner, backing them and supporting them to help them through those changes in their life. And whether that's life or business, it doesn't matter. We have to have supporters to help us do that, because you can't do it on your own. It's just too challenging.
No. Okay, that's great. So we've got the S, the L,
yeah.
and the I is something which is actually to do what's important to you, okay, of what's of importance, and that's typically around your own values.
Mm-hmm.
And the types of people you actually want to be around. And so just thought if we could talk about that in the context of the Slimpact model.
Yeah, sure. So for me, the most important value for me is freedom.
Freedom.
That is my highest value. I value freedom like nothing else.
Mm-hmm.
And freedom for me means freedom of speech. And freedom for me means freedom of choice, obviously. And I think that, being a business owner, you have all of those things, and you have freedom of time as well. And sometimes you feel like you don't, because you think, I'm running out of time, I haven't got the time. But actually, who controls your time? You do. You control everything about what you do or don't do, and including the people that you work with or don't work with. And so whilst there can be times, for businesses, and I've experienced it, and I know others that I work with have, where you go, I'm working with this client or that business, and I don't really like them that much, or they don't really align to me, but you're going to do it anyway because you need to for revenue purposes. But as you progress in your business, you get a chance to really choose. And you don't have to follow up an inquiry that is from someone you don't really fancy working with. You can make those decisions. And so over time, you get to work with only the people that you really enjoy working with, that treat you the way you expect to be treated, that, have the kind of business that you're interested in helping. And so for me, freedom is, I have so much freedom now that I never had when I worked for somebody else, and could never have working for someone else, because I didn't have freedom of speech. You have to toe the line and say certain things. And one of the things that my clients always appreciated and respected about me, back in the corporate world, and probably now in my business, is that I'm super direct and honest. And they prefer that. That's what they want. They want someone to tell them the truth. And often, working in advertising and marketing industry, it's not that people are lying. It's just that the truth can get, it's all wrapped up and embellished in a bunch of, political talk and political speak. And you just go, let's just speak the truth. And I think that's something that really is of value to me. And now that I have my own business, I have the opportunity to do that. So I can be as honest and direct and free as I want to be, which is amazing.
So this is really good stuff. And I would frankly say that in terms of having one's own business, I've been in business now for a number of decades, that freedom is high up there on the agenda. So in terms of my own values, and so anybody listening to this, I'd encourage that if you do want to move into your own business, certainly take a leaf out of Stevie's values list, and think to what extent safety and within a corporate environment or a structure ranks higher for you than, say, freedom. And there are times in your life when you'll find that one is more weighty than the other. Stevie, I do want to actually just get to the M side of things in Slimpact, and that is the money side. And maybe there's a way that what we can do is we can approach this by testing the waters. Okay, how did you start to test the waters in your own business in order to get the money, where you looked at the intersection of your S, your L, and the I?
Ooh, that's a tricky one. How did I test the waters? Well, I mean, I guess, when I first started, I didn't really know what I was doing. I don't think anyone does. I thought I would know because I'd been working, on all these leadership teams and stuff. Oh, I know how to run a business. Didn't have a clue. So I think, at first you're just trying to get some clients. And so you don't really align the money to necessarily to your values or your strength. You actually just sort of do what you need to do to get things moving. And so sometimes I think that means working for less than you probably think you're worth or want to be worth or want to charge. And I definitely did that in the early days. And then I think, as you grow, you start to, it is a really interesting intersection, because as you grow in as a business owner, you really start to very quickly identify the things that you're good at and you enjoy versus the things that you actually aren't very good at and perhaps don't enjoy as well. And so it becomes more and more important as you go through to focus on the things that you love and enjoy and value, and therefore money has to align to that. So you have to charge what you're worth or what you believe you're worth. But actually it's quite a tricky one, because, and I see it often with people that I coach, is they're not charging enough because they're too scared to charge more, and they don't have confidence in their own ability to charge more. And I definitely had that issue in the beginning. And then you start to realize what an impact you have on people. So the more you work with people that you like, that align with your values, that you get that are aligned to you in that value sense, the more you start to realize your own worth, because they appreciate your worth. And then as a result of that, you start to get more confidence about what to charge. But I think that also there's a balance between, like, if I was still working in those corporate roles and I continued on up the proverbial ladder, I would be earning, well, I'd be earning a very good salary, like I'd be earning a high six-figure salary. And I think that when you then obviously go from a reasonable six-figure salary down to not very much when you first start in a business, it is a balance, because you're saying, well, I'm valuing more, instead of money and regular income and knowledge of what that regular, like security of what that regular income is going to be, I'm valuing more that freedom and that ability to do my own thing. And at some point, the two have to then kind of balance out. So you've got it there now. It's like, okay, well, the money's now really good and I've got the freedom. And that's kind of when you hit like, kind of point in your business, I think.
Do that one again.
It takes but it takes a while to get to that point, obviously, because you have to build it up. So I think, I'm not sure if that answers the question, but I think the money is, and also money is different when you get a salary versus, when you're in your own business. Because in your own business, at first you get really scared because you don't have that definite amount that comes in at the end of the month or the fortnight that you do when you're an employee. And whilst you build that up over time, so you go, oh yeah, I kind of roughly know how much is coming in each month in your business, there's always ups and downs. And there's some months are more busy than other months. There's certain months consistently every year in my business where I know I'm not going to make very much that month, but the next month's going to be like a triple whammy. So you kind of get used to that over time. But in the beginning, it's quite scary, because you go, oh, I don't know how I'm going to pay my bills, and I don't know where the money's coming from, and is it going to be okay? And then, I think this year, every business has had a bit of that feeling, no matter how long they've been going, because of COVID, and going, oh, hang on, what's going to happen here? And it's kind of probably shocked everybody. But I've been really calm about that whole thing, because I've now got, having been in 6 years, I mean, you would have been anyway as well, Greg, having been in for so long in business, you kind of get used to that feeling of not really always knowing what's coming when. And actually it doesn't bother you anymore. You're just like, oh yeah, it'll be all right. It'll be, this will happen and that will happen. And, because a day, 24 hours in your own business is a very long time. You can wake up in the morning and have super bad news about something. And then by the afternoon, suddenly you've made another 50K that you didn't even know was going to happen at the beginning of the day. You're like, okay.
And that's very much the case. In fact, I must say, even with that, I mean, I'm used to, and this is one of the things I'd like for our listeners to hear, and that is that over time one builds up the tolerance for the variations. So there's a
Yes.
very, very big difference between being on a regular pay packet and then getting into into your own business.
Yeah.
And I haven't had that feeling of a regular pay packet for decades now.
Yeah, exactly.
Do I like it? Yes. Do I like it? No.
Yeah. But
Okay.
you know what? But I wouldn't give it up for anything.
Because of your
So,
values. Because of the
because
values
it's
of
a
freedom.
different, like when I worked in like advertising marketing agencies are very stressful environments. It's high pressure, long hours, you never stop. And I I may have experienced that, I guess, a little bit in the first few years of my own business, because you're trying to get it going, you just never stop working. But now I've settled into, oh yeah, that's all right, I'll do that tomorrow, it'll be okay, because I'm more calm about it all. And I think that the stress that you get as that in that corporate world, it is stressful, but it's a different kind of stress than you get in that business owner world, where you're like, everything, you know, sits on your shoulders and you don't know necessarily what's coming in the next few months money wise. But it is a different kind of stress, but I'd much rather have that stress than the stress that I had when I was in corporate. Oh my God. And I have control over it as well, which is amazing.
So I'm here with Stevie V Brown, and Stevie and I are sharing about getting into your own business. But what I'm hearing, if you listen to what Stevie was talking about, it's very much a values-driven decision to continue within a business, to start a business and to continue within a business.
Yeah.
That's actually an important thing. I will share with you. Let me share with the readers a little bit of my story, and that is that just briefly, and that is that in the first year where I started Career 365, it had a different name, and I can count the number of sales that I had on 0 fingers. I made 0 sales in the first year. The business model failed. So I had to actually pivot in order to be able to actually look at what we were doing. And since then, very different things have been happening, thankfully. But with regards to that, it's a values-driven decision around this side of things. And so testing the waters could actually also be around, I'm going to have something that's going to bring in some income and have a side gig that I'm going to build up. Did that side gig ever come to you?
Yeah, I did that as well. Like the first year when I realized, you know, that actually it was going to be harder than I thought. Because everyone always thinks it's going to be so easy, right? They're so, oh yeah, I'm going to do this and I'll put up a website and that'll be it. And so when I realized, I need to support what's happening in the business, I just took I did a 3-month freelancer, full-time 3-month freelance role in an agency, like in a digital agency. And that was like high money. So I was able to build up a little bit of a war chest. But then I actually ended up working, so I did some work for a business that provides advice for businesses. And so it kind of gave me the opportunity to do a business coaching side of my business. That was a bit more regular, because at first I did I actually sort of went in and did a part-time marketing role for them for like 2-3 days a week initially, and then I did 3 days, then I was 2 days, and then I kind of went to just a sort of contract basis with them. So that was a massive support for me financially in the beginning, and also not just in the beginning, but after a while it just became a regular thing. I was like, well, I might as well, you know, keep it because it's good income. So I think it's definitely something that, you know, I probably should have thought about a bit more before I actually took the leap about how I was going to really keep myself going. I think I was naive, and I didn't realize, you know, how long it was going to take to get to some serious money. And not just that, but how much money you actually do need to make in order to make your business viable, because you go from being a personal individual and you've got your individual budget, you know, your rent and your bills and stuff, to having a you know, obviously a business budget as well. So you've got additional expenses to run the business, and you know, that does add up. So you need even more coming in to make the maths work.
Absolutely. And so can I ask you, just helping the audience understand, what would Stevie V Brown do in hindsight?
Um,
Again in hindsight.
what would I do again in hindsight? Well, I guess what I would do again is what I do every day, which is back myself. And I think this is a really important thing because there's always lots of people telling you, giving their advice, offering their advice, and tell, oh, you should do this, you should do that. You know, my sister-in-law's brother, whatever, you know, did this, and then my aunt said we should do that, you know, and it becomes overwhelming. And so it's great to have advice, obviously, you know, we all need advice from specific experts about specific things. But I think, you know, there's always friends and family who want to tell you, you know, you should do this, you should do that. And the fact is they're not running your business, you are. So I think what you have to do is, you know, you need to do what's right for you, and you need to back yourself, and you need to have confidence in your own decision making. And, you know, I think that's something I've always done. There's always times when I'll waver and have doubts, because we all do that. We all have self-doubt. We all question, are we enough? Are we good enough? All the time. You know, everyone does it. It doesn't matter how confident. I'm sure Donald Trump's done it before, even at some point in his life. He must have done. Maybe not. So I think, you know, you have to back yourself. And I think, you know, I mean, I'm making a joke about Trump, but on that point, you know, if you look at someone like him and his character, you know, love him or hate him, the fact is that why has he done so well in life? Like, why has he got to be president? Why has he done what he's done in his business? It's because he has never, you know, he doesn't seem like he's once questioned his own ability and decisions, right? He just forges forward. And if you look at anyone in those really high-end positions, that's the same with them. They're super, super confident about what they're doing, and they really believe in themselves. They really believe that what they're doing makes an impact on others or creates a better result. And I think that it's really important for business owners to believe that for themselves, not in a super arrogant way, but just you have to back yourself and follow your guts, because your gut's nearly always right. And I think that's what I would do again. And I do that. I continue to do that. And it's important.
I think it's fabulous advice about backing yourself. I often don't hear enough about that.
Yeah, you got to back yourself.
You got to back yourself, which is fantastic. Okay. Yeah. And what about just one thing that you would do differently if you had your time again, Stevie?
So the one thing I would do differently is I would actually get more clear in the beginning about what the vision was for the business, what I was actually trying to achieve in the long run, in the long term. Because I see it a lot when I always, you know, I speak to businesses about what they need to, you know, they've got a need for marketing or something around marketing. And I always go back to, well, let's just go back to the beginning. You know, when you started your business, what were you expecting? What was the vision? What were you trying to achieve? And most of the time, the answers are of a personal nature. You know, and it's things like I've said today, like I wanted to get out of corporate world, or, you know, I really had a passion about a specific thing and I wanted to turn it into a business. It's very rarely that they'll sit there and say, oh, well, you know, I had a vision that, you know, in 5 years' time, I'd have these products that would be passive income. And then in 5 years from then, I was going to sell my brand and retire. They don't really have an exit strategy. Most small businesses don't, unless it's in the startup world where they're, you know, they go out from the very beginning to get investment in order to scale, in order to sell in the future. But I think that's the one thing. It's like I wasn't really clear about what I was doing it for and what the ultimate end game was. And I probably feel like I'm still not that clear on that. And I think, you know, as a result, I sort of went down a bit of the wrong path in thinking that I was going to, you know, heading down this path of trying to make this big brand and scale. And then I kind of realized I didn't want that. And I sort of pedaled backwards. I actually don't want that. I'm not looking to build a global empire, actually, because if I do that, I have to have employees, and I don't want employees. Because
you want your freedom.
Well, I want my freedom, exactly. And also I really enjoy and appreciate the opportunity to support other small business owners by contracting their services as and when I need them, and them doing the same with me. And that's actually a really fantastic network that exists for small businesses. So rather than as always having this concept of employment in the traditional sense. And so, yeah, so I think that's the one thing, is like, get clear on what's the end game, what you're really trying to achieve.
So let me share again. I would identify very much with what Stevie was saying, and we can set up a vision for something,
Yeah.
Often that vision doesn't work out in the way that one intends. I know that one of the seminal authors in this space for entrepreneurship is Michael Gerber, who a number of decades ago wrote a couple of iconic cliches, which is work on your business rather than in your business. But the other thing is that he says that in his book, The E-Myth, and that was that most people start a business in a fit of entrepreneurialism and that they understand the technical side of the business, not the business side of the technical. Your comments on that?
I think people get very excited about the concept and the product or the service that they're offering, which I think is what that's sort of saying.
Yeah.
So that, you know, and I see this as well because I have a second business and I work with startups specifically, and they come to me to get help with creating a pitch deck for investment. And always when they have done their own version of a pitch deck, what they've done is they've created what I would just call as a sales presentation, which is all about their product. Here's our product, it's fantastic, it does all these things, and you know, there's 5 of this and 10 of that, and that's great for when they need to go and sell it into their customers. But when you're trying to get investment for your business, what you're actually trying to do is convince somebody to buy the business, not your product or service. And so it's a very different proposition when you're wanting to sell the business. And so often what people have done is they focused on their product and their service. They focused on getting that absolutely amazing and spot on perfect, and they're tweaking it and tweaking it. But what they haven't done is looked at the actual business, and they haven't got a marketing strategy, because most small businesses don't. So they don't know what they're doing with marketing. They're just sort of doing random odd things. They haven't got a business development plan. They don't know how they're going to go out and you know, build partnerships and build relationships with potential customers or other, you know, businesses that they can partner with for joint ventures and things like that. And they don't know, they haven't worked out some of the other stuff, like their pricing structure just doesn't really make sense in terms of profitability. And, you know, it kind of looks pretty on a website, but it doesn't actually make sense in the back end. They haven't actually worked through how much it's going to cost them to deliver the thing that they said they're going to do for $399 or whatever, you know. So the business side hasn't been worked through because everybody enjoys the bit that they're creating, because that's the thing they're doing. That's what they're passionate about. So they tend to focus on that part of it.
Yeah.
But I do find as well that it depends on people's background. So if you have an accountant, someone that's trained as an accountant, and they're starting a business, whether it's an accounting business or something else, they will focus on the financial side of the business. They'll set up a financial model, they'll do all their projections, they'll work out all their, you know, all their cogs and everything. They'll have it all, you know, specifically worked out, but they've got no way of communicating what they're doing. They haven't worked out how to package their services. They haven't got any marketing. They haven't got, you know, a team plan in place, those sorts of things. Whereas if you get someone who's, you know, got a background in marketing and they start a business, they focus on, as I did, the brand and the way, you know, they're getting their website and they're getting all their marketing materials ready, and that's the bit they focus on. So depending on your background, I think dictates what you actually focus on in how you set your business up, so you can get a different result. And
it doesn't necessarily mean also that you go in as a sole director into a business, but you could actually say, okay, well, recognizing that marketing, in your example, is a strength, but that financial management is a weakness. A good yin-yang partnership can actually be to have different parts come together. Absolutely. Rather than the same strengths coming through.
And that's why it's good to do that audit in the beginning, because you want to go, what do I know I'm good at, and what do I know I'm not good at? Yeah. As you grow in your business, you'll learn differences in that, and the things that you are bad at will be glaring. They will be glaringly obvious.
Yes.
And then you do have a choice. Do I plug that gap with another skill set, or do I just bury my head in the sand and not worry about that part? Or do I learn how to do that thing myself so that I can get good at it? Those are your choices. Like, I wasn't very good at sales, because marketing is not sales. And I can do marketing, but I can't, I wasn't very good at sales. So I spent money with a sales coach to learn how to do sales. I'm like, I've got to get good at this. So I learned how to do it. That was my choice, because I didn't want to bring someone in for that, because I'm a coach and people will buy from me because of me, not someone, not a sales team. So I needed to get good at it. But you have to make these choices about
very much the case. Okay, so as we're wrapping up today, because there's been a lot here, then what we've looked at was Stevie's in the lens of Slimpact. We looked at Stevie's strengths, what she the L is what she loved. Okay, so the S was the strengths, the L what she loved and recognized that she'd moved in. What was important to her, it was very clear. Her value was freedom. Then she tested the waters, worked things out, had a side gig, built that up over time. And what we can do is we can learn from Stevie and copy something like that when you, as people who are in between jobs, may seriously consider the idea of moving to your own business. Just a quick thing whilst we've got Stevie V Brown with me, and that is that what is the Change Starter? What's the pitch on the Change Starter?
So the Change Starter is a coaching and training company, and what I do is I work usually directly with the business owner of small to medium enterprises, and very often in the B2B professional services space, but not exclusively, but like you, yeah. And I work with you, as you know, to help develop your marketing, and that can be a whole broad range of things, because it depends on the stage that the business is at. But generally, I work with businesses that are already established, and they're ready to really take a good, serious look at marketing and how that's going to help them to grow their business and evolve their business for the long term. And so I will work with them on a range of things. Can be from their actual brand positioning, how they stand out in the market, who their target clients are, and getting really clear about that. What they are going to put out to market in terms of how they communicate and package their services. Can we sometimes do pricing strategies? And then also we might look at an overall, obviously, marketing plan, how they're going to put their marketing out. And then some clients I work very practically with. So once we've got to those strategic parts done, we actually work through, the specifics of marketing. So in a coaching session, we'll focus on a campaign, specifically creating that campaign and helping them to get it implemented. And a lot of what I do also is actually assess, clients will get proposals from marketing implementation providers. So it could be a designer, a web developer, a copywriter, and I'll actually have a look at that, and we'll assess the quotes together so we can make sure they're getting the absolute best out of those providers, and that they're briefing them effectively and getting a good cost-effective quote as well.
That's great. Well, I can say that I've been working with Stevie for a while. Met her a few years ago. We're working closely with each other, and I would certainly say that as far as the value that I've got from Stevie, she's been absolutely fantastic. We'll have Stevie's contact details and the like in the show notes. I want to thank very much Stevie V Brown. I'm saying V Brown because there is a Stevie Brown who is a famous...
I think he's a basketball player in the US, and that guy kills me on Google.
Right. Well, and that's why that's why I've said Stevie V Brown from the Change Starter. Thank you so much, Stevie. It's been really a pleasure being with you. I've enjoyed learning from you, and I hope everybody else has as well. It's been lovely doing that with you.
Thanks, Greg. I really appreciate it. It's been fun.
Thank you. It has been too. Thank you for listening to the Start Strong, Finish Strong podcast. If you enjoyed listening, please like and subscribe so you never miss an episode. Share the podcast with your teams, and of course, we'd love you to leave a comment or review.